after divorce and started my business over again and pulling it all back together. And it's very interesting. I had built quite a big following in Portland, really big client base. And coming back here, when I left there, I left a lot on the table, a lot of business. I had to give my ex half of my business. And I came back to DC with my kids. And there were a couple of reasons why I came back. It's home, that's one thing. But I wasn't necessarily wedded to DC in terms of even that being my home. I've always been more of sort of a West Coast girl than the East Coast, because DC is really a political town, it's a government town, and I've never really been interested in it. But one of the big reasons I came back here, I maintained a lot of my clients from the West Coast. And when I came back here, a big portion of it was led by my daughter, who felt that, Mom, you need more recognition. We've done enough in Portland, Oregon. We, like Kamala, because my children are mixed, my daughter said, speaking of herself and her brother, we need to see more Black examples in life. So it was always my idea to bring them back, but she really ushered it in and pushed the envelope and came back and went to college here. My son, unlike my daughter who grew up in Portland, she grew up in Portland. My son literally grew up here in Washington, DC, in the Bethesda area. So it's very interesting that he now is back in Portland at the University of Portland, but can't wait to get back to DC because both of them really feel that their lives became enriched by that experience of being here. Their lives also had interesting turns in terms of being accepted for who they are, as they're not fully white and they're not fully Black. But when they go out into the world, I told my children the same thing that Kamala's mother told her. When you go out into the world, people will see you as Black. So you need to prepare yourself to be African American, or at least a Black American, which is my story. My daughter's story is very similar to Kamala's. My daughter is also an AKA, and her coming up and just being in Portland where people were like, well, what are you? They saw her as Black because Portland's so white. And when she came here, people were like, well, what are you? Are you Hispanic? What are you? You know, so it's very interesting that to see herself now in another woman who is of mixed culture. And that is America. And that's why it's so exciting to be where we are today. So my story is I'm a mother, usually first and foremost. I've had several business clients, well, not clients, I've had business associates say to me, why do you give so much time to your children? Because I always made my customers, my clients bend to that. If I was traveling, they had to travel my children with me, especially when they were younger. And I got them to do that. Because why else do I wake up in the day? What's the purpose? Is to raise them to be contributing, enlightened beings on this planet. And so everything I do is about them. They're starting to grow up and get out of the house. Well, my daughter's been out of the house for a while. She now is part of my business and will be the legacy that will carry it on. And my son, as I said, is in college. So they're out. I've pretty much done my work, but you know how that is being a mom. They always come back home. They always come back home. They always come back home. So it's good. It's good for me. It's good for them. And I'm excited about being here today. That's my intro. I'm sure I left out some really exciting, powerful things that I've done, but we'll get to those things as we go through the day or through our time together.
So Denise, thank you so much. I would like everybody to introduce themselves, and I just made up this question right now. If you could just let Denise know, you know, what town you're in and who you are and how you've changed from yesterday to today in a minute or less. Let's see, Chris, you want to go first? And I'll just call on people. Chris, go first, and Robin, would you mind being on deck?
Sounds good. Well, good morning. I'm Chris, and I live in Phoenix, Arizona. I'm spending 3 months helping care for my parents in Wisconsin. Um, and what changed from yesterday to today? I just have this sense of hope that feels brighter, joy that feels more colorful, and I feel renewed to even roll up my sleeves more. I'm like, okay, let's go. And so I'm filled with that energy and am grateful for that.
Mm. Chris, thanks. Robin, you're up. And then Tara, would you be okay about going next? Go ahead, Robin.
Okay, I'm Robin Strawn. I live just outside of Portland, Oregon. I also, like Chris, I had this like weird burst of energy yesterday. And then listening to Kamala speak, I just, I remember when Geraldine Ferraro was running for vice president, and it was like the first election I was aware of, and I was like so disappointed that we didn't have a woman in office. And I don't know, I just got like so overcome with emotion about that. And I don't have a similar background to Kamala, but I am mixed race, Latina and white, and so I just felt like that gave so much power to girls and women around the world that I was just excited. So yeah.
Well, Robin, thanks so much. Tara, and then Lee after Tara.
Okay, so my name is Tara Shimada. I live on Savi Island, which Denise probably knows. It's about 8 miles north of the city. It's it's an all agricultural island where the Willamette and the Columbia come together. I think that for me, I lived 20 years overseas in developing countries, and my children are bicultural, biracial. And so for me, sort of, growing up with my children as they tried to understand their own identity and their own sense of power, they kind of called themselves third culture kids because they didn't feel like they really belonged anywhere. But I think that, when I was watching the power of Kamala talking last night, I realized that, my daughter now has something to really like hook into, that she's not just half this or part that. She is all of these things. So I don't know, yesterday was just a really kind of just a really beautiful day of celebrating this incredible, unique melting pot of mixtures of all of our families and cultures and children. And so I had actually hurt my back, so I missed a lot of the day-to-day nail biting of the last week. So yesterday I just got to tune in to all the celebration around the country, and I was just joyous. So I'm happy to be here on the call this morning.
We're so happy you can make it. And Lee, what has changed in you from yesterday and today? And tell us where you are in the world.
I'm in Flagstaff, Arizona. I'm originally from Minnesota and then the East Coast. And I'm retired, and I've been here a couple of years. And there's been so much confusion here, and not just confusion in the world, but I've been confused because I haven't felt that there was any kind of culture or center, that everyone was kind of going in opposite directions. And today, I don't feel that way. I feel like we're all coming together. We're all kind of there for each other, rather than being defensive. It feels like there was always some defense or some obstacle. And it feels like so much hope and so much openness that we can do whatever we need to do together.
Lee, thank you so much for speaking that out. Holly, I'm just going to jump to you. I didn't set you up, and Delphine will be after Holly, and in 1 minute or less, where are you and what's new with you?
Hi, I'm Holly Braun in Portland, Oregon. And I totally agree with the sentiments that people shared, but I have maybe a little unique, kind of funny one. I was reflecting that as a kid, I wanted to run for president in 2020. I would write my name in 2020 after it. And then instead, I phone banked. And so I just think it's kind of funny to go from like, I want to be president to, well, I'll call some people and ask them to vote. But it also represents, I think, a bigger shift in that I'm realizing I don't have to lead an effort to be part of an effort. And so I feel like there's been a little bit of a
Excuse me, could somebody please mute?
Katie, I think maybe you need to mute. It thinks you're the, all of
Yeah.
a sudden I'm like, wait, was I not supposed to go?
Yeah.
And so this shift of being able to help advance something without leading something, just being part of something. And so just kind of a release as I've gotten older, but I think specifically to this year, that's become more clear. And that's freeing.
Yeah, sounds like true servant leadership, Holly. Delphine, you're up, and then 719-321-6203 is after you.
Okay, hi. So, I mean, yesterday was just unbelievable. The sense of relief, pleasure, hope, and the pain, all that pain that was finally able to say, you know, to come out of all of us. And the thing also that we can't forget, and sorry, I should have started with that, is I'm originally from France. And I've been in the States for some time, and I lived in different places in the world. And let us not forget that it's not, you know, this election was about, of course, for the Americans, but it's also for the rest of the world. Because the pain that the rest of the world has been feeling for the past 4 years has also been immense. Yes. So this absolute sense of finally the planet's coming to some senses and taking the right decision, even if there are still too many people who perhaps still support Trump, was just, you know, I still don't have the words, as you can tell from what I'm trying to say, but you get it and you understand it. And on my end, I also have a daughter who is 16, and she's also biracial, mixed, and so forth. So it's very, very inspiring, because I feel like I'm definitely less alone now. To try to change a little bit, you know, step by step, the world where we are, and to make it a bit more of a unified platform where everybody can have a voice. And so I'm here today, and that's what has changed, because I'm here today listening to you and getting inspired, feeling less lonely in that day-to-day battle where you try to go against the social biases of this planet. So thank you for being there and arranging it all.
Delphine, thank you. And Mystery Sister at 719. And then Alex, you'll be after her.
Hear me?
Yeah, go ahead. Who's on? It's 719-321-6203. Go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I wasn't sure which way was mute. This is Kimberly Acker from Colorado Springs, Colorado. But hi there. Calling in from Corsicana, Texas. I'm actually my parents where I'm from originally, but I was thrilled, of course, with the results, and I've been tearful throughout the last couple of days, just as I've realized, and I'm just so proud of what the country was able to do, but also this mixed feeling of how on earth are we going to, you know, bridge this divide, because I'm certainly down here in Texas with family and friends who were not of the progressive persuasion. And I honestly don't know how to have really good conversations about that myself. So I'm here on the call to be inspired and to maybe talk about how do we start doing the hard work of building those bridges now.
Great. Oh, so nice to see you, your phone icon, Kimberly, and hear your voice. Alex, you're up. What has changed for you since yesterday, and where are you in the world? And Bernal, you'll be after Alex.
Hi, I'm Alex. I'm in Portland, Oregon. And the thing that's changed for me is I woke up not nauseous today for the first time in a few weeks. And a little bit less anxious. It's one of those things that you don't notice how tight you're holding it all until it isn't that tight anymore. I didn't notice it getting all tight, but now I notice the release of it. But the first thing I thought yesterday was like, this is where the work starts also. That we're definitely not like, this is the tip of a huge, huge iceberg. So yeah, I sang for the first time this morning in a few days also as a reminder to like, we have voices, we can be strong with them, and we can use them to lift others and have those conversations. Now the healing starts. So we get to have those conversations that help heal. And I'm excited about it. Thanks.
Thank you, Brunel, and then Kim.
So hi, everyone. This is Burnell, and I'm in Brooklyn, New York. I am a native New Yorker, and Brooklyn really just exploded yesterday. It's like car honking and folks in my neighborhood, the streets were filled with people just celebrating. For me, and what's one, I felt relieved, and also now very prayerful because I feel that those that are elect need to get through this period of the next 2 months and making sure that they get the right team together, but also praying for their safety. The other thing for me is that years ago, my daughter wrote a paper and she talked about the fact that she was fifth generation American. And so that made me think I'm fourth generation American. And hopefully I can just say that. And the work to be done is to make sure that all people can say that. And it's not necessarily to be of a divide of it, but I am fourth generation American. And how do we get that to be equal?
Brunel, thank you for that. Kim, and then we'll go to Alana after Kim. Where are you and what has changed for you today?
I'm Kim. I'm in Portland, Oregon, and I have been breathing easier. I have been feeling hopeful, and I feel like love won over fear. I feel also what Alex voiced about having healing conversations, and I am feeling like this is a big moment because for the first time we have a large portion of us having energy to actually be active in our politics and to stay active in our politics and to use our voices. And so I am excited, and I know that we have hard personal and collective work ahead of us, and I'm just kind of excited and I'm ready for it.
Yay. All right, Alana, and then we'll go over to Katie Schnepp.
Hi, everyone, and hi, Denise. Fantastic to see you. It's been quite a while. Thank you, Beverly, for hosting all of us. I am calling in from Manhattan, New York City, though between here and Miami and in much transition. So from yesterday to today, stark differences. Definitely what has been shared, hope, breathing more easily, a real illumination of the foundational principles of what our country was built on, of freedom and democracy, and kind of beginning to feel that returning in that concept of unity that Lee spoke to. And I appreciate also Delphine's points. I'm in touch with a lot of people globally, and it was very tearful to be connected to someone from France yesterday, like literally messaging me while it was happening, because we've shared colleagueship, to just see what this means to her, but also what she can understand it means to me and to our world here. A return to pride as an American and inspiration. And the most critical piece that was least expected is that I've been digesting the role of character, and in reading Biden's history, woke up this morning just in the midst of writing something about the role of stillness and how that emerges who we are. And I just felt this profound change of attitude for myself in the midst of a very, very difficult time. And I just felt truly re-inspired with possibility, looking at his life and of course the extraordinary opportunity that Americans have voiced to put Kamala in office. So yeah, pause there.
Wow, Alana, thank you. Katie, nice to see you, and Kelsey will be after Katie. Where are you?
Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. I'm Katie. I live on Long Island, but right now I'm actually in Brooklyn Bridge Park. It's a beautiful day here today, and huge sense of relief. Yes, also still disgusted to my core that the election was so close. And for the last 2 days, I've been in a virtual conference with the New York State Outdoor Education Association. And yesterday, when we heard the news, we were in the middle of our workshop on making our programs more inclusive. And people from New York City were on the call, and we could hear the yelling and the celebration outside of their windows. So that was really neat. But just, you know, huge celebration for the fact that we have our first woman and Black and South Asian woman as vice president. Very happy that we have Biden in the office. Watching his acceptance speech last night, it was tears of joy. Also, you know, cheers of yelling, just all the emotions, and definitely ready to do all the work ahead of us to keep the momentum going towards social justice.
Great, Katie. Kelsey, you're up, and yeah, please mute if the speakers, if you're not speaking. Kelsey, and then it'll be Evelyn.
Hi, everyone. And Denise, thanks for joining us today. I'm Kelsey. I'm originally from Portland, but live in Arizona right now. What changed for me since yesterday is that collective sigh of relief, a sense of hope and inclusion, and energy, and maybe a little dancing. What hasn't changed is commitment to continuing to do the work to hold these great leaders accountable for the change that they've committed to, as well as what others have referenced in conversations to change the mentality of still a large majority of, or no longer majority, minority of Americans who voted for Trump, and supporting the Georgia Senate runoff coming up too.
Yes, indeed. Evelyn, and then Kimberly Sherwood.
Aloha, everybody. I live in Hawaii in a little town called Volcano, which is on the Hawaii island at about a little under 4,000 feet elevation. So it's cool and rainy here, as opposed to the stereotype of Hawaii. I am not from anywhere in particular. I grew up in 6 different countries. So I yesterday felt like I could breathe for the first time in years, and I didn't even know how clenched I was until I wasn't anymore. Somebody else, I think Alex was saying that. And then I spent most of the rest of the day feeling very sick, which I thought was just interesting. And I think I just have some toxicity to get out of me after the last 4 years of just the intensity and horror of it all. And then what I've been noticing is, I haven't heard anybody else say this, but I echo almost everything people have said, you know, joy and all of that. But I'm also really pissed. I'm really angry still, or differently, I guess, than I was yesterday. I think there's some almost more freedom to be angry in a slightly different way. But also, I really hope that we don't do this, the sort of, you know, what I think of as I'm not so sure it's time for healing, you know, I think it's time for freaking action. And I really hope that we don't do this like, oh, let's all get along and work across the aisles bullshit. We need to get some things done. And so I'm feeling some tension around that, at the same time that I feel all the other happy feelings that many of you shared. And I'm tired. So I'm just having sort of some physical reactions, I think, are around healing just what I've been holding on to all these last four years. And I'm glad to hear. So thank you for this.
Thank you, Evelyn. Kimberly, and then let's go over to Laurel.
Good morning, everybody. Kimberly Sherwood, and I am in Colorado Springs at the edge of Pikes Peak, known as America's Mountain. And what is different for me? To be candid, I feel like I've been on this journey for a really long time. My sister is here on the call as well, Jessica. And perhaps it's not different from yesterday, but it was different as a result of the election. And Jessica coined it, but I am using it. And that is carrying the big flag of the United States, and what it means to be an American for all people. So I am stepping into this moment as a compassionate witness, standing shoulder to shoulder with all of you women, but also with the people for whom they are hurting. And I really appreciate, Evelyn, what you said about the time for action, for getting things done, and that perhaps the best way that we can actually move into healing is to be active, and to find those places where we can really make good progress that demonstrates to all people, but particularly our relatives, our BIPOC relatives, that we are here and we're ready to do the work, and we're actually doing the work, not just talking about the work. Thank you. Denise, I'm really excited to hear what you have to say.
Thanks for your wisdom, Laurel, and then we'll go to Jessica and then Denise.
Hi, I'm Laurel. Good morning, everyone. I'm in San Diego, California. What's changed? I think I'm feeling relieved. I think what's changed is feeling like I can finally take a breath after the last week, and exhale and not be holding my breath looking for, is it going to change? Is Pennsylvania going to flip back? Is Arizona going to flip? So it's like it's settling in that it's real. And I still don't know if it'll fully feel real until it's acknowledged and the transition of power happens. Because I think I'm still, and thank you to Brunel for bringing, for bringing to the table, concern for the safety of our newly elected executive office. And really aware that this is just the first step, that this is, even if we're celebrating the first baby step towards getting to where we want to be. This was much needed, much welcome. I did not know how I was going to look at 4 more years of what we've been doing. But it's not enough, it's a start. And then kind of looking at where are we going to find the energy to keep digging in, having gotten to this milestone and put so much energy to get here, because there's still so much work to be done.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I definitely, with everyone who's like, who is wondering how do we bridge the divide? How do we bring the other 49% to the table that don't believe in that vision of all lives having value and the working class having value and being our strength and deserving a good life?
Laurel, thank you.
So no, I'm sorry, I've talked way too long. Thank you.
No, that's all right. It's good stuff. And Jessica, you're up.
Hello, I'm Jessica Sherwood, and I am in Denver, Colorado. I won't take up too much time. People have said, echoed many of the sentiments that I definitely am feeling. Having worked in the activism realm since I was 17, I am, cautiously optimistic. Waking up today, the United States is still the new imperial power, and it's supporting regimes and causes that aren't necessarily on the side of freedom and democracy. And I'm still, again, optimistic. I think that this is a great first step. And one really tangible way, Beverly, because I know you said like what feels really different today, super tangible way is that people in my neighborhood have put American flags out, and for the first time in 4 years, I don't see it as a threat, but I see it as a symbol of unity, which I have not seen for 4 years. So thank you.
Wow, thank you. And Denise, we give you the floor with all of us sisters waiting to jump in and dialogue with you. I'd just like to say that this session will run longer, at least till, until whenever Denise wants to stop us. Certainly probably till 15 after the hour, if not maybe later, just whatever you guys would like. Denise, thank you again. Now you know the sisters that have joined in before and after you here in the Generative Council.
Yes. So it's great to be back in the Generative Council pool of wonderfulness. I want to start out by saying a couple of things. One, you said we have until 2:15. Is that what you're saying? My time. Which West Coast would be, I don't know.
Yeah, at least that time, if that's good for you.
Oh, 2:15. So we have a lot to do.
Or more to 2:30 is good. You pick.
We'll get there. We'll definitely get there by 2:15. Before I go on, I want to acknowledge a couple of things. Evelyn, I want to acknowledge the toxic feeling that you have in your body. And I want to acknowledge it for all of us, because all of us have toxic stuff going on for the last 4 years. Is there any surprise that the global environment is experiencing a pandemic? Is it any surprise that in our trek to bringing Biden and Kamala into office, that the globe is also excited as well? And part of that is because we are a family. And part of the reason why we see the 49% is because the 49% does not see the whole. They only see a part. And that's okay for now. It's okay for now. It's okay for now. It's okay for now. So Evelyn and I think Brunel both brought up some real things, and real things are very important, not like the rest of us didn't have real things, but they're those things that you would think on a day of celebration, you don't want to bring those things up. So I'm glad you brought them up, and I want to put them over here for a second. And I want all of you to put it over here for a second. We'll come back to that whole piece. But for now, what I'd like for each of us to do is just close our eyes and take that primordial breath we've been waiting for the last 4 years. Just take it in whatever way you want. I see Alex is stretching. If you just want to sigh, whatever it is, just take that primordial breath and let it go. Let it go. Just let it go. Let it go. And then just take one more primordial breath. It's, that deep diaphragmatic breath, because the diaphragm breathing is what connects you with your highest purpose, your highest self. And yesterday, everybody took a primordial breath. And that's why we saw the hope and the joy It comes from letting go. It felt safe to let go. Yeah? Yeah. So in the next, I personally, I said to myself, I'm giving myself 3 days to celebrate. I'm just going to give myself 3 days to celebrate, to cry, to whatever that makes you feel like, woo, I accomplished something, because we accomplished something. So that's why I'm saying I'm taking some of the things of the work, because it's not like I'm not going to talk about the work, but I want us to really appreciate what the celebration will do, because that takes away the fatigue. That's what gives us that inner strength. That's that celebration, just unbridled, don't need an excuse, happy that it's Biden and Kamala, but the bottom line is ding dong, the witch is dead, right? Yeah, yeah, ding dong, the witch is dead. Witch, oh witch. All of the witches, all of them. There's some of them that are still hanging around. So I want to talk about the witch. But I want you to stay jovial as we go through this stuff. Just whenever you feel yourself getting into a space where you're starting to think about it too heavy, just come back to yesterday was one of the most incredible days in our lives, at least for the last 4 years. But if we were to give ourselves the truth, we've been working on this for a long time. And in every evolution, there are dark days and there are light days in every evolution. That doesn't say that when we're in darkness, we don't stub our toe or feel uncomfortable, or the boogeyman comes, and says horrible things about us and all of that. That can happen in the darkness. But the great thing about the darkness is that it makes us realize we have to turn on the frickin' light. That's why being jovial right now is a way of revving up the light. And I would say each of us are not that far from the work that we've been doing over the last lifetime. We're still on the path of doing our work. It's just that we've been carrying that work in darkness. And it seems like no one was really appreciating. In fact, no one was appreciating, except for those of us who carry light all the time. So it's having those sticks up to hold up the sky. I recently listened to an interview with Joe Biden and Brene Brown. I'm sure everybody knows Brene Brown. Yeah, quite a powerful interview. If you didn't hear it, please listen to it, because you get an insight into Joe Biden that I don't think the debates and all of that, because those debates and all of that stuff is not set up for letting someone show their light. They're shut up, they're done in competition with each other, which is unproductive.
Delphine, I think there we go.
So as we celebrate and continue to celebrate, give yourself 3 days. Doesn't have to be 1 day.
Does the host have the ability to mute everyone? And then we just have to choose to unmute ourselves?
Yeah, I think you can do that, Beverly. Yeah. Now, I'm not saying anything. I'm not saying anything that you don't already know. You already know this stuff. All of this is stuff we know. But listen to that, because one of the things that Biden said in that interview was, we have to remember that 50% of the sky is held up by women. And I just absolutely love that Kamala said he took the audacity to bring not only a woman, but a woman of color. And as much as that may seem like, well, of course a woman of color, it's not of course a woman of color in our country. Our country still hasn't dealt with slavery and systemic racism. It has not dealt with that. Because if you're wondering about that 49%, How is it that 49% of the people can choose a racist over someone who would understand the need to have a woman on a ticket? And it's because it's painful to look at yourself. But in order to really evolve, you gotta look at yourself. You have to. And you have to recognize the good stuff and the shadow stuff. America was built on systemic racism. Even the Electoral College was based on how many slaves a state had. And here we are still using that system today. Now, I ain't mad that Biden won in the Electoral College, because he could have been like Hillary and won the popular, and we still have craziness in the office. So it worked. But everything about America needs to be looked at. And I would suggest that we start looking within ourselves first. Now, granted, I'm saying this, I know that this team, this group of women, you do look at yourself. But now there's another deep dive that we have to do. There's another deep dive. So I wrote this, because Beverly said, well, what are you going to talk about? I'm like, I don't know. Before I read it, you should hear a little more of the background of who I am. And I'm learning more about who I am every day. I thought, in my move from Portland, Oregon, where I was a household name in the world of training and consulting. I mean, if someone wanted to get presentation skills done or media training, I was the person called. I spent 6 seasons with the Trailblazers when they were the Jailbirds or the Jailblazers. That was a lot of work for me to do. And saw major racism. I was called all kinds of words because I was identifying with the African-American men on that team. So, the interesting thing about being awake to yourself is giving yourself credit for the hard things you've gone through, because they create character, and then accepting the work that you've done and your value in all of that. That's where the work today begins. Because if we start to think that we're going to change those 49%, percenters, just that's daunting. You remember what it looked like to wake up the day after the election and see all that red on a map? It's exhausting. And we don't want to go back to exhausting. We want to work from the center, the solid center of self. That's where we want to work from, the solid center of self. Leaving Portland was hard for me in terms of leaving everything on the table like that. But what I also left when I left Portland, because that divorce was so hard, it took 4 years to get through it, pulling my children apart, it was really, really difficult. And so for the last 10 years, on some level, I've been punishing myself. And the best way to punish yourself is to devalue yourself. Now, part of that was my divorce. The other part of it is the underlying ideal or idea or consciousness or collective consciousness that America has about women. 55% this time voted for Trump. 52% of women voted for Trump in the last election. What's up with that? And a lot of it has to do with, all you had to do with it is to look at the woman that was just put into the Supreme Court. I'm not even talking about her politics or her way of looking at, I'm just looking at how she was devalued and became a pawn for the male paradigm. And she didn't even know it. Maybe she knew it. I don't think she did. I think that that's what happens, is that as women, we're standing up for what and for whom. It's important to understand who we're standing up for, and that who should be us and our values first. So you've got to assign value to what you do, what you bring to the table, because believe me, what you bring to the table is incredible. One of the things that kind of woke me up, and I'm kind of like surprised at myself that I could find another level of value within myself. That's what these days going forward is all about, dropping down, finding out another level of how badass you are. I was interviewed for a board position. I guess it was interviewed. I'm not quite sure, but we were talking about a board position. And my first thing, this ties back into my coming from Portland, where I had all this wonderful stuff going on and a successful business, and moving back here. It's not that I don't have a successful business. It's not as successful as it was in Portland. So coming here, being interviewed for this board, I hung up and I went, wow. Number one, I'm still grieving the past. All that stuff that happened to me, good and bad, mostly bad because of course you're going to beat yourself up about everything. Of course, those little magpies in your head tell you all the negative stuff, not the positive stuff that happened. I'm still grieving that. And number two, I had forgotten some of the powerful things that I had done, like hold the hands of the Portland Trailblazers to get them through a major piece of their life. That organization and the turnaround, I was essential to that, but I hadn't given myself credit. So that's why I want us to stop today and just celebrate that we are some badass women. My daughter and I call ourselves, you can't steal this because this is probably going to be the name of the book. We call ourselves Goddess Boss Bitches. If you want to call us a bitch, absolutely, that's what I am, because a bitch is audacious. It's like AOC said, you know what? Bitches get things done. And we don't apologize for it. And a boss is someone who, like Stacey Abramson, she just saw that job and she stayed focused on what she had to do. It's like, oh, I don't hear all the biases. I don't hear all the stuff that our system, our society, our culture as a collective culture would say about me as a Black woman, me as a woman, me as whatever. I'm just gonna focus and get it done. That's the boss. Now, all of us are goddesses. We're all three of these things actually, but a goddess is the one who has a vision. She's got this big vision, and her vision is about the collective all. It's about the collective all. These are my children. You know, Mother Nature, she's a goddess. And it's this magnanimous big thing is the goddess. And we're that too. So my point is, I'm starting to look at a deeper value of what I bring to the table, and it's changed the way that I'm speaking up about myself. 15 years ago, I started a workshop called The Power of Your Presence. It was for women. I started in Portland. Portland's a great place to get anybody to transform, and so I always had bunches of women taking the class. And the funny thing about it is 15 years ago was really, really early on in the process of talking about women's leadership. It was very early. And at the time, I said to the women that took the class, I did a bunch at Providence. I did a bunch of women doctors at Kaiser and Nike and Intel. It's places that you would think that women's leadership wouldn't come across, but it did. And one of the main things that I said at that time was, we're sitting at the trough. At some point, it's going to crest and become a tsunami. And that's where we are. We're not quite crest yet, but we're pretty powerful. But we've got to create this collective, what the Vedic term calls kavach. A kavach in Vedic terms, Vedic is ancient knowledge. It's a kavach is how you surround yourself with this kind of shield that's impenetrable. Yet nothing comes in to penetrate, but everything that's powerful and the light can go out. Isn't that cool? That everything that's powerful and of the light goes out. Nothing can penetrate it that's not of the light. And that's what we've got to create going forward. You've got to create that. So I took some notes that I want to share with this whole idea of the kvatch and going deeper into who we are. But this is what I wrote when when Beverly asked me what I was going to talk about. So it's you've got the power. You already have it. You got it. I mean, come on. Yes, 55% voted for Trump, but we can take care of that. It's not a problem. You got the power. You have the power. So I'm saying no matter what the outcome of the election, our time to stand up, speak the truth, and transform the world is right now. I forget who talked about their friends from France and that they're all in tears, happy that we finally got our act together over here. Sort of, mostly. This is the time to reconnect, and I just added this because this wasn't on the original that I sent out. I can send this out again. This is the time to reconnect and reimagine. Reimagine. I forget who said, you know, we came so far. Somebody, one of you said that. This is the time, I think it was Laurel, reimagine. Reimagine what it would look like. The power within ourselves and to honor the gifts in others. Reimagine enjoying the gift in yourself, whatever they are, and reimagine the gifts in each other, because that collective kvatch comes from empowering one another. And that's one of the skill sets of the goddess. She empowers. She walks around in her power, and just by the fact that she walks around in her power, everybody else gets empowered. Like last night, Kamo. It's time to inspire, and to Brunel and Evelyn's point, cajole, and commit to what is more in alignment with the things that we as women believe in. Let's establish a council of inclusivity, innovation, and integrity, what I call the 3 I's. And let's establish new norms and bring about a resolution for change and transformation. Become that which you want to see in the world has never been more important. It all starts with our voices, the backbone of our power. It is our time, so let's answer the call. There's not one woman on this call today that's not ready to answer that call. But I am asking you to go deeper and to think more expanded about yourself and the power of what you really bring to the table. When I talked to a couple of friends of mine the other day, we realized that 4 people in 10, in a group of 10, 4 of them voted for Trump. So that means you're interacting with people who voted for Trump and you may not even know it. How do you transform those people? By standing in your truth. That's all. You can't shrink to make them feel happy. You know, you can't. That doesn't mean that all the conversations are going to be happy camperish. My daughter and I came up with that word. It's not going to all be happy camperish conversations. Some of them are going to maybe be a little heated perhaps. But I wouldn't seek those conversations out necessarily. I would seek out the conversations where you can establish the truth, where you can establish your truth, where you can stand in your power. And if those people are drawn to your magnet, so be it. Reason I'm saying that is, I'm sure all of you, because of the pandemic, have been studying all kinds of stuff. I've been meditating, I've been doing chanting, I've been doing everything. And guess what? It all worked. I'm taking credit for all of it. As should you. All those hours of meditation, and I've been walking and yoga, and all the things that we know that will give us that internal power we need to help a phase transition happen. And we're in a phase transition. In a phase transition, according to physics, everything will pop up. All of the shaking happens. And what we're experiencing in this phase transition is the shaking. That's why some of you are worried about what Trump's going to do. He's got a little more shaking that he has to do. Kvatch is spelled K-A-V-A-C-H. Some people put an E on the end. So there's this shaking going on. And the thing about the shaking, the way to get through the shaking is you have to be resolute in your stillness, awareness, clarity of self. That's how you get through it. It's like when you put down a ship that's going out and it's being thrown around by the waves, you got to put the anchor down and hold that ship steady while you're going through this. Because the phase transition will pass. Because it's a natural, talk about generative, phase transitions happen before purity reestablishes itself. That's according to physics. That a system is about to change into another way, first has to shake, and it's the staying still, that what they call that unified field. And now they're talking about unified field being consciousness as well. So the more we stay collectively conscious about the shake and stay still, it helps it happen, and it happens faster. But it's going to happen because it's a part of the ebb and flow of nature. And that's what happens. I mean, forest fires, if they're not set by people, will naturally happen to clear the dead wood out of a forest. Some of the good wood goes along with it, but that's a natural thing. Everybody with me? So standing still within yourself is so important. The other, I was listening to Greg Braden. I don't know if you all know him, but he's a biologist. He's a scientist. And he is one of the foremost people who've done research into science as it merges with spirituality. And his thing was, when you're going through this phase transition, it's important to understand that as a collective conscious, trying to create healing conversations, it's important to see yourself in a bigger value. So, example, a bigger value, they say that according to science, if you see a transition that happens, the collective transition is a mindset. Now, America's mindset was established on slavery. That's why it's so important that we be clear about what's going on in America. And so that mindset does everything to cling on to it because that's the one thing we know. And then there are the rest of us who just want to expand and experience, and we've done the inner work and we see life from a more innovative value. But what really helps the collective consciousness change is when you see that more full value with your own eyes. It's almost like you see a miracle happening. When you see a miracle happening, or you see the phase transition creating a certain result that you've been wanting to have all your life maybe, when you see it happen, it automatically changes the consciousness. That's what they're seeing in science and this whole thing about the collective consciousness and the collective unconsciousness. So how did I take what he said and apply it to today? Kamala said it big as day yesterday. She said, I'm not going to be the last woman to hold this office. In that word, words are a big thing to me. I teach communication skills. Words are big. In that word, we saw ourselves. And when you see yourself like that, it changes it automatically. The consciousness changes automatically. You don't have to work hard. She changed the consciousness of America just by saying that, just by showing up, being herself in that space. But to say it on top of that, it almost puts a stamp on the experience and the transformation. Now, if I'm getting a little too ooga booga, that's okay. I want to be a little ooga booga because that is a powerful experience that Greg Braden was talking about from a scientific perspective. We saw it happening with her last night. Each of us. It doesn't matter if you feel that you don't have any family or origin of color. You saw a woman of color, you saw a woman of mixed color, mixed nationality. How does it get any better than that? And in that moment, the consciousness changed. And that's how fast we can get certain aspects of a phase transition to happen. Certain aspects. There's still more work to do, of course, but we put that over here. Remember, that's over here. We're kind of celebrating. So healing conversations, I would suggest the first healing conversation is dig within yourself and see about what you're still holding on to in the collective unconscious. You know, the ways that we do things. The George Floyd thing brought up, you know, the whole idea of injustice and systemic racism and all of that. And then all of a sudden, my white girlfriends are like, well, I didn't know I was being like that. Or I didn't, you know, my family didn't have slaves. It's in the DNA. Hate to tell you, but it's in the DNA on both sides of the fence. You wonder why African-American people function in a certain way. Why are the men in our family always separated from us? Comes from slavery. Comes from slavery. Why are Black women so strong? Because we had to take care of everybody. Comes from slavery. That's what we did. We took care of everybody. So you got to go into some of that stuff in the history of America and see what is white privilege doing? What is, you know, what do Latin Americans bring to the table? Let's start looking at that. Right, Robin? Let's take a look at that. What are they bringing to the table? What from their own collective country consciousness are they bringing? Because that would explain something about Florida. See, we don't have to really confront anybody. Hold on, I have a cat. We don't really have to confront anybody. We just have to confront ourselves. And it doesn't have to be a confront. Just look at the mirror and see, because the beauty of the negative thing of African Americans being taken away from their husbands and taken away from their children, and how that got passed down in the DNA, and how we still react in that way. That's the hard part, but the beauty of it is you have people saying, you know, Black women really brought it all home for America. That's what we do. So there's a positive and there's a negative on both sides of the fence, from the systemic racism that this or the, you know, you can call it systemic racism or you can call it white privilege, what it has created for both sides of the fence. And I would say, for as much as people are holding on to white privilege, it has really damaged the psyche of America. In many ways, I mean, that's the answer to your 49%. When I had someone explaining to me that the three things that made people vote for Trump was abortion, guns, and taxes. That's crazy. But it's what America was founded on. Abortion is not so much about losing a baby or a life. It's more about how do you control women. Let's be clear. You know, it's like that Kamala girl, Kamala, whatever her name is, you know, that's called trying to control a woman. And then you take a woman that you know you can control and put her on a seat on the Supreme Court. So yeah, Evelyn, you're right. We got work to do. But the work is self-work. It's work at looking at ourselves and deciding, all right, here are my columns of good things and here are some columns of bad things. And eventually, when you hold steadfast to the value of yourself, there is no good and bad, because all of those things that you've experienced in your life make you the whole of who you are. I had some very, very, you know, tough things that I went through moving here. And for years, like I said, I was grieving, but also flogging myself for those bad things. Well, you know what? It made me into the character that I am. There's some things I know I will never do again. And there are some things that I know that I needed to skin my knees a little bit to become more of who I am now. Or else I couldn't stand in the power and talk to you. I couldn't be in my own power and talk to you. I want to open it up for just some feedback in just a second, but I wanted to let you know that I took notes. I am a 4th generation American. All of us should be coming up with I am statements. Okay, promise me you'll come up with at least 3 I am statements, because that's your voice. Just think, I hadn't said, what did you say? I hadn't said anything about that for so long, but I realized that I'm a 4th generation American. Well, why does that matter? Because it does. It's pretty cool. The other thing that someone said, it may have been Evelyn, I'm not sure, but someone said energy. I have a lot of energy, but I realize I need to keep digging. So we kind of know where the digging is. You can't change that 49% on the level of the problem. You can only change that 49% by dropping down into yourself and showing up like Kamala did, and looking for the opportunities. You know, she said Joe was audacious to bring her in. Well, it was part of the times. But yes, he had the character to be able to stand up. So sometimes the door, you got to look for the opportunity where you can stand in your power. And that when those opportunities come, you talk about it. I love it when she says, "Excuse me, Mr. Vice President, I'm speaking." I will never forget. That's a mantra. And I want each of you to know that. Excuse me, I'm speaking. Because that's a way of taking power away from a woman. And then the new mantra is, I'm not the last. So look for opportunities. I'm going to join some board. I'm going for some big board. I'm not going to go for a baby board. I bring too much to the table now. I have too much. Any company would be blessed to have me. A couple more things. I think I got a lot of stuff in that I was taking notes on. Just really loving the healing conversations using our voices. I love that. That might have to become a chapter in my book, because I just love it. Healing conversations using our voices. The healing happens when you all talk about the power of who you are. Because of that whole thing that I just talked about, when you see yourself, you know, just by revealing who you are, changes it for the collective. So more of your conversations when you get together as a group, think deeper when you're introducing yourself. Start out with one of those 3 I am this statements, because that's when you will stand in your glory and it will change the consciousness of the group. A kavach, remember, is a shield around you. And usually the most powerful kavaches are collective ones of like mind. So create a kavach around yourself. The other thing about a kavach in Vedic terms, one of the reasons, the deity that creates the kavach is Mother Divine. So don't forget, we're powerful beyond measure as women. We got the power. You have the power. It is our time. It's time to step in it. Don't go chasing after trying to transform these people who they have not awakened to, especially the women. You know, the guys, the women have more power, but don't chase them. Just stand in yours and speak up a lot and do it collectively. That's an important piece of the puzzle. So if there are any questions, I think the one technique I want to leave you with is find your 3 I am statements and then use them a lot. And then in the next 3 days, just have fun. We've had a bunch of stuff. We've been dealing with a real ass for 4 years. And it's the epitome of out of alignment masculine power. Because the truth is that feminine and masculinity have to be in equal power. There has to be alignment in order to create the whole. But the bottom line is that it's been out of alignment. Nature abhors a vacuum, so she's creating a shake. That shake is where we're at. And on the other side of that, and we don't know how long it'll take, but standing in your power, according to physics, if you stand in that place of solidity, the transition doesn't take as long. Now, I know it's been 50 years, 40 years, 200 years, 400 years, but we are at a place where we've never, ever were able to look at slavery as a country. Last weekend, I went down to, I don't even know why I did. I think, you know, my life gets kind of led sometimes. I went down to Thomas Jefferson's house, mansion, plantation is really what it is. It's a plantation, just a really beautiful plantation, you know. And when you come in now, because of COVID, you can't go straight into the house. They put you in these little holding spaces. And in the holding spaces, one of the first things they talk about is Sally Hemings and how he was not a perfect person, that he had this concubine, and that he had 6 children by her, and how she had to negotiate to free her children, but he didn't free her. It's very interesting. And one of the tour guides, there's kind of several places now throughout the tour where you can see and hear Sally Hemings' story. And it's interesting because one of the tour guides said, she said, you know, just 5-6 years ago, you wouldn't even known there were slaves here. Nobody lived here but Thomas Jefferson, because they had hidden all of that. And the truth about the plantation is everyone on the plantation knew about his relationship with Sally Hemings. They knew that Sally Hemings was his wife's half-sister. It gets deep. And they knew that there were these children that were going around that were born from his loins. So it's an interesting thing. We are at a precipice where we can start really looking, and we can look at it and begin to heal. That's the healing conversation that needs to happen in the United States of America. And then once everybody realized that if Thomas Jefferson had children by a Black woman, there are a lot of mixed kids out there, because it was the standard in plantations in the South. So we all are more one than we realize that we're one. And so it's not going to be, don't be afraid to look at that and to deal with it, because we've got the mirror of an African-American Asian descent who is now standing in power in the United States with a man who values who she is. That's alignment. So we're lucky in a lot of ways. So that's me. I didn't know where I was going today, but I hope it was useful to everyone. And let's open for questions.
Can you share with us your 3 I statements?
Well, you know, I'm in the moment, so I just kind of figured that out too.
So it's not like this thing you've had?
Well, you know, I'm going to think on what mine are too, but I am a transformative leader. There's no 2 ways about that.
Yes, you are. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I've got to stand in that more, and it's my time, and I can't hide from it anymore. And hopefully you got a chance to listen to the podcast. So I'm going to be doing this next phase in my podcast is all about, all right, now what? Next steps. And I'm trying to bring in people who will inspire next steps. For instance, the podcast that's up now is all about VCs who are supporting women in technology, women who own their own business. Now, what's the difference between starting my business and being someone who's supported by a VC? Lots of cash. And normally we don't talk about that.
And for those of you who don't know where that podcast is, it's listed in the event. Just go back to the event on the GC Collective and scroll down, and you'll see the podcast with that Denise is referring to.
But I want us to think bigger, because that's why a VC is so important. I never thought about a VC. You know, I thought about angel investor, but a VC, they bring in tons of cash. And 3% of all venture capital money goes to women. We got to change that. I need some of that cash.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What other questions? or comments?
I just have to say thank
Denise?
you. This was so valuable.
Good. Very good.
Thank you.
Very
Denise,
good.
can you speak a little bit more about the kavash, the protection, but also you talked about the light shining through.
Mm-hmm.
Can you speak about the opposite sides of that concept?
Well, what do you mean by opposite sides?
Well, I guess I heard contrasting. So if I'm just armored up, I don't see light coming out of an armor, you know. So I'm seeking to. I'm running for city council in my city in April. Yeah, and a lot of people have said to me, you need to have thick skin, and I don't like that metaphor. It doesn't work for me, and so I've been playing with the word abide, which is more standing solid and deeply rooted, you know, tree able to withstand a lot. But when you talked about kavach, that struck my ear, and I don't think I fully understood the light shining through, because I don't want to shut out my open heart and my great listening ears, because I am an outstanding listener.
That's her I am statement. Well, the thing about a kavach, even when I visualize it, it's crystal clear. It's clear. You know, it's like, it's this kind of globe around you that's clear. It's not dense, it's not dark, it's clear. But the great thing about a kavach, and this is all from the Vedic tradition, which is 5,000 years old. And, you know, the beautiful thing about a kavach is that the negativity cannot come in. There's so much light that when it comes to penetrate, it dissipates because there's so much light. So a kavach is clear. It's very clear. It's not closed in any way. But think about the power of Mother Divine. So the power of Mother Divine, the power of the feminine, the divine feminine, is that she's balanced. One of my favorite statues, I almost want to run and get it for you, but one of my favorite statues is a statue of, oh my goodness. Oh, I can't think of her. This is one of my gray hair moments. It's Tara.
Yes.
And she is sitting, she's sitting, and this side of her body has a shield on it. It's a vest. You know, I can actually run and get it, but let me explain it. So this side has a vest, and her, you know, her hand is on her hip like that. This side, her breast is open and her leg is up like this, and it's graced like that. That's the male-female imbalance. And you have to, you know, the funny thing about a bitch is, you know, a bitch is calling in all of her masculine power, but she's also calling in the emotion of a woman. And emotion of a woman is like sharp. It's like bam, like that. That's how AOC could just take that guy down on the steps. Like, how dare you talk about me like that? But it wasn't even about her. See the difference? It wasn't about her. And then the shield goes up, but that other side, that ability to be the divine feminine, stays open. And it's important to examine both sides of your power to see which are you using consciously, or are you using them both consciously. And the sad thing about guys is that they've been taught not to use their feminine side. That's why they're so whacked out, overdoing it.
Thank you. That's really helpful. Thank you.
So when you go in there, stay true to your heart. Some of the study that Greg Braden has done is that the heart actually, and I can't tell you the name, I have it written down, but I can't, there are neurons in the heart. The heart is also an intelligent organ. So it feels, it senses, and it thinks, just like the brain. So it's actually more powerful than the brain. So learning to balance the two, trusting your intuition, which is kind of a woman thing. It's not, men are not exempt from that, but women tend to go with that a little bit more. So trusting your heart and bringing it into alignment with your intellect. So stay that way when you're in there. because that's how you're going to transform people.
Hey, Denise, would you, it just resonated with me right now, examining both sides of our power. Would you be interested in exploring doing a workshop for pay for GC to honor your time and your power, but on that topic?
Yeah, that would be fun. That would be fun. That would be fun. That'd be great. If that's what you want, it'd be great.
Well, does anybody else sound like that would be a good one? Well, we don't have to do that publicly. We'll do it later.
Yeah, that would be so fun. Yeah, I'm a transformative leader for women too. That would be like my second one, because my focus is really on women. I feel that the sooner we come into balance and start to, just like I said, you know, when Kamala said, I won't be the last, according to physics, boom, the transition happened. When women start to step into their full power, we don't have to worry about the men. We've just been out of alignment, you know? And we're getting there. I mean, I'm talking to the choir.
I think even the workshop to have the tools to develop those I am statements, because we want to be living in our glory and standing in that, but not in the ego. And so I feel like that is a challenge of how do I like live into all of that, but not connected to my ego, which shapes my identity. So I think that could take a bit of work to process through, and maybe would be good fodder for the workshop you were talking about, Beverly.
Yeah, ego's an interesting thing. On one level, you need the ego because it keeps you on the planet. But what happens for the ego is the ego always sees good and bad. It's a polarity deal. Good, bad, you know, hot, cold. It's like that. And the other thing about the ego is it's connected to the collective unconscious until you free it up. Yeah. So you have to do the work that we're talking about to make sure that you're coming from a more centered and more powerful place as a woman, because there's so much stuff that we've been told about who we are that gets caught up in what our ego is.
Yep.
Instead of the ego being clear enough for it to be balanced to say, I am a transformative leader, and that means I bring both things to the table. Let me show you the statue. Hold on.
So for those of you that want to dive more deeply into Denise's work, the links that were listed on the program description and the event has her link to her website.
So this one is like hard, you know, masculine, and see the breastplate over here. And then this one is the breast, and her hand is like graciously hanging over her knee. You know, isn't that isn't great?
Yeah.
It's clearly a woman. She's a woman, but she's in balance. You know, and she's a goddess. And that's what happens when you're in balance. You live the fullness of the goddess.
Denise, if people would like to know more about your podcast, I'm sure they're listed on your website, or when they click on the link for the current podcast that you sent us, does that make it happen that people will plug in and get information on future podcasts that you're going to do?
It'll take you back. It won't take you forward. So all the podcasts that I've done going back to 2 years ago or a year and a half ago are there. And there's some yummy stuff in there. It's just that now that I know I'm a transformative leader for women and that I'm going to be holding accountable, but mostly guiding, it's not holding accountable, just saying, how can we go deep? These next few going forward will be all about, here are some things that will make us expand beyond our own thought. Because getting off the interview with that venture capitalist, all of a sudden I was like, well, heck, someone should be supporting my business for $100 million. But usually as women, we don't think big like that, but guys do all the time, every day, and their businesses get funded to those tunes. And so it's now, even if you don't plan on being someone who needs a venture capitalist. Just the fact that I brought that knowledge up, you're ready to support somebody who does. And the way that nature works is you'll probably end up talking to someone who needs to know that knowledge.
Well, and just to share out to everybody here on the call, you know, that's what the Generative Council is going to be doing next year to support their new vision. Our new vision and strategy is to seek big funding to really make a big difference in the world. You guys will, everyone will be hearing more about that in the coming weeks.
So if I was going to scan I know some people have had to leave, but if I was going to scan this, there is a lot that's generating right now. You can just see that each of you, you know, are starting to percolate, that there's this, and that's what yesterday did. It allowed us to go, okay, now I don't have to put all my energy into this madness and the hope of bringing back alignment, because the alignment process has started. And all we have to do is continue to make sure that we have, i.e. Georgia comes along and brings people in. We have to figure out ways to seed our vision. And that vision is a platform of innovation, inclusivity, and what's the third thing? Integrity.
Denise, as a gift for you, we would like to each give you a word of your impact to our hearts and our minds today. So that just spilled out of my mouth, you guys. So let me think here. Gratitude and admiration.
Brilliance.
Thank you.
Goddess.
Tenacity.
Embodiment.
Ignition.
Love it. Katie said power.
With ease.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Alive.
Balanced.
Aligned.
Forward.
We are so pleased to see you again. Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
Thank
You went
you.
over a little bit, but
Thank you for being a part of the Generative Council. We look forward to joining with you, supporting you, having you support us as we go forward and make the world a better place, which is why we are a kavach unto ourselves.
Very good job. Thank you. It was really
Thank
good.
you.
Thank you.
I don't know if you did this earlier, Beverly, but maybe people are leaving already and maybe I'm too late.
No, you're not. Go for it.
So this is a perfect lead-in to our sort of official launching of a new series of conversations we'll be having, and that is Unlearning Racism. And I'll be sending out an official announcement about that. But we're going to be having a conversation about decolonized ways of giving thanks. Evelyn and I are working on this, and this is an invitation for everybody to join and to help curate these conversations and this work that we're talking about of digging deep and, you know, the process of unlearning the racism and the white supremacy that is embedded in the DNA of our culture and our country. That is deep and important work, and we need to do that here in GC, and that's what this series will be about. And so I invite everybody to partake. So then November 22nd, we're going to be having a call, and we've started a conversation on the collective. So feel free to jump into that, whether or not you're able to join on the 22nd.
And Kim's looking for questions and comments to help shape that day. Right, Kim?
Sure, yes.
Okay, cool.
And Beverly, Kim, if we have individuals who might be interested or who are not currently in GC, how do we direct that?
Direct that to Chris and myself for now. We're going to be making these conversations open to non-GC members to get them jazzed about GC, and pay attention to the new events that are coming out. It will say either open to the public, in which case you can invite everyone who should be in, or closed specifically to GC members.
But still women, right? When you say everyone in the public, it's still the female.
It's women specific.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. All right, everybody. And thank you for your time today, your deep hearts and connection with each of us. And we'll see you soon.
Yeah.
Okay. Bye.
Thank you.